It is another edition of What Would Stewart Do? I'm Mark Stewart Greenstein, candidate for governor of Connecticut, and since I will be in the same room later today with another candidate for governor, that's Bob Stefanowski, I want to just let people listening know my budget plan and juxtapose it somewhat against Bob's. He wants a tax cut that gets rid of the income tax totally within 8 years. I like it. I'd like to do it faster. Mine's within 3 years. Here's how it works. It works with the knowledge that we could cut the personal income tax by 43% and still have a very robust state government with little sacrifice. Okay? I've identified $4.5 billion less spending out of a $20 billion budget. Okay? I remove things that are not necessary. I do remove some things that are good that I'm convinced are going to get funded privately anyway. I have other videos for that. For now, here's what this removal looks like. As soon after my inauguration, as the General Assembly permits, people now start to pay less. 30% less. Their income tax can be withheld by their payroll company to the tune of 30%. If they are independent contractors doing quarterlies, 30% less than what you paid last year, or if you had a big year last year, then the higher of that 30% or 40% of what this year's liability looks like, okay? If you're a small business person, again, 30% or 40% if you've had a big 2018. So withhold it, because if the General Assembly permits it, it means we don't need to come after you for withholding some of your money. It's part of the legislation. Now, what if they don't go along? And come June, we still have a recalcitrant General Assembly. I'm going to let you do it anyway. Over my dead body. If this many Connecticut voters want my tax plan and a few legislators are stuck in their own ways, I'm going to win. I may have to win in court, but the popular will is going to win out. So starting July 1st, even if the General Assembly doesn't go along, withhold. Okay? We don't need the money. Now, what happens on the receiving end? Those departments that have budgeted for the past and come November 6th of this year see, ooh, newly elected Mark Stewart has the plan that there's going to be some deductions. Okay, you're on notice. You got 2 months. January 9th is inauguration. January 10th, conceivably, the General Assembly could go along. So plan for it. And plan for a 10% reduction in most departments. I'm not asking for more. In some departments, I am. Again, these are the ones that are not necessary to the state's operation. How do you get funded? Privately. If you're good, you're going to raise money. You're going to start in November. You're going to display the goodness of what you do, the efficacy of how you do it, and you'll do it with my support because a website will be on full display as soon as possible, before inauguration if possible, so that agencies that are doing good can continue that, can possibly get even higher funding, because the money that does come in through the tax code, 70%, is going to be directed by the taxpayers to the agencies that they want to fund. That's the smorgasbord, and I talk about that elsewhere. So, 20% of the departments may get somewhere between 0 and 20% funding. But remember, that's funding from the state. They could get 100% of their funding, if they're good, from the beneficence of taxpayers, who finally recognize that their dollars can go to work well. They'll be directing them to agencies that do well with their money. Agencies that don't still have our support for a couple years. Okay, the state will put a thumb on its scale because there may be some unrecognized necessary services or just plain good services that haven't gotten the funding to have an abrupt dislocation. Now remember, you've had abrupt dislocations 2 times in the Malloy administration when the budget ran out and they didn't do a new one. So I'm less dislocating than that. You got time to plan. And if the General Assembly sees fit that those agencies that are getting the big, deep discount, that it spreads the wealth. The 90% funding might spread itself and fund the weaker 20%. Fine. That's up to them. I'm in the taxpayer's corner saying we are going to be 43% less. Now, I'm actually only asking for 30%. We'll be on the proper side of that. So, I want people to recognize we can still fund our services with 67% of the services getting 90% of the funding that they had before. 90%, that means a 10% cut. Almost every business has been through that before. The 20% of departments that really have to slim down, they could market themselves to be even better. There's 13% left out there. What's that for? Yes, I do math. It's the debt. And we do have to pay the debt. That's the big club that we cannot omit. So that gets funded 100%. In my possible scenario, that's the middle one on Stewart for Liberty's budget. The middle one has us funding the debt at 130%, so that we are making a dig in at lowering that debt every single year that we can. All right, that's my plan. 3 and out. You can do this 3 years in a row. 30% the first year, 34% the second year, 36% the third year. You're going to get better and better services. You're going to lose some, but they're going to be the bad ones. The ones that are well funded might be better funded privately. You might get a horde more donations. And stay tuned for the other part of Stewart's munificence. It's when we go after the federal tax code and give conscientious tax objectors a huge boon if they don't want to take federal services that are unconstitutional. That's next.